Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast. We bring awareness of sustainable health in a business hustle space. The Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve optimal health. Let's get into today's topic. So you have been told your thyroid issue is genetic and there's a pill to fix it. But little did your endocrinologist talk to you about your gut. I mean, it's not their role overall. It's their role to talk to you about your thyroid. But I'm here to tell you that there is an absolute connection between your thyroid and your gut, right? Which is known as the Thyroid Gut Axis. As Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut, right? And he's absolutely right. Poor gut health can suppress thyroid function and trigger Hashimoto's, such as low thyroid function, and can lead to leaky gut and vice versa. So there is an absolute link between our gut and our thyroid. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's podcast episode. I'm going to talk about what is the Gut Thyroid Axis, how the gut affects the thyroid, and vice versa. And I'm going to give you 3 tips on how you can optimize the Gut Thyroid Axis. Let's get into it. It's Mondays with Mihaela. That's right, me. Thank you so much for tuning in. I absolutely love, and appreciate your support. For any of you who don't know me, my name is Mihaela. I'm a qualified naturopath, absolutely passionate about all things health, business, and overall success. And I'm here on Mondays to provide you with simple, savvy, and sustainable health hacks to optimize your health. And this is a segment of the Natural Health Podcast. And today's topic is such an interesting one where I want to be discussing the Thyroid Gut Axis. As I said in the start of the video, you may have a thyroid issue, or you may be suspecting you have a thyroid issue. But if you have one, you have been diagnosed and your endocrinologist has not spoken to you about the gut. Like I said, I mean, why would he or she talk to you about the gut? Because it's not really their part of their specialty. Their specialty is in endocrine system, which includes the thyroid, right? But I'm here to tell you there is an absolute link between the two. And then I'm going to tell you how to optimize it. But we're going to start off with what is the gut thyroid axis? I mean, you've heard about the brain gut axis and so many other axes and so forth. But you're like, I've never heard about the the gut thyroid axis. Please enlighten me, Mihaela. Well, I'm going to, right? I will summarize in short the gut thyroid axis and the roles of it. So to understand a bit of it, we need to understand what is the gut, right? I talk about the gut all the time, but to give you a bit of an summarized edition of what the gut is, it's the gastrointestinal tract, consists of hollow muscular tubes starting from the mouth, where the food begins, continuing through the pharynx, the esophagus, stomach, the intestines, rectum, and anus, where the food is expelled. Essentially, it's the whole little tube, the gastrointestinal tract, which the gut is part of it, right? The human digestive system is a means by which tissue and organs receive nutrients and to function. The system breaks down food, nutrients, and converts them into energy, in short, right? So essentially that is the gut, the gastrointestinal tract. What is the thyroid, right? I'm going to go a little bit more into detail about what the thyroid is. So a thyroid is the gland that makes and stores hormones that helps regulate your heart rate, your blood pressure, your body temperature, your metabolic rate, and so forth, right? The thyroid hormones are essential for the function of every single cell in your body. And this is why individuals who have thyroid issues, it affects your whole body. It helps regulate the growth and the rate of chemical excretion metabolism in our body. So it's quite important for our metabolic rate, which most of us want to make faster. It's quite interesting, but making your metabolic rate faster may also mean that you may age faster, but that's another topic, right? So the thyroid gland is located in the lower part of your neck, below your Adam's apple, right? Wrapped around the windpipe, and it's a shape of a butterfly. Little shape of a butterfly. Has 2 wings attached to either side of the middle part called the isthmus, right? So there's a little bit of science there for you and how the body works, right? So the thyroid uses iodine, which is so important, and it's a mineral found in foods and also nowadays in Australia in iodinized salt to make its hormones. The two most important hormones are thyroxine, which is T4, and tridothyroid, which is T3. We'll just leave it as T4 and T3 to make it simple, right? And also thyroid stimulating hormone is TSH. So if you've ever got your blood tested, they probably tested your TSH and you're aware of that. And that's produced by your pituitary gland, and it acts to stimulate the production of thyroid hormones, right? So the thyroid gland also makes a hormone called caltocin, which is involved in the calcium metabolism and stimulates bone cell and adds calcium to bones. That's another part of it, but I thought I'll put it in there, right? So let's talk simple, Mihaela. Let's talk simple. T4 is converted into T3. So you need T4 to make T3, and T3 is the active hormone. Both of them are regulated by TSH, right? If your thyroid is not working the way it's supposed to, it's not optimal, you can either have hypothyroidism, too much, hypothyroidism, too little. So let's look at some of the signs and symptoms of having a hypothyroidism, which is an underactive. In addition to that, there's also autoimmune diseases, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to go into the basics of it, right? So if you have an underfunctioning thyroid, you may experience fatigue, weakness, intolerance to cold, muscle aches, cramps, constipation, weight gain, poor appetite, enlarged thyroid gland, a goiter, dry, rough skin, a deep voice, loss of hair, eye and face swelling, enlarged tongue, irregular or heavy menstrual, depression, memory loss, slow thinking and mental activity, increased blood cholesterol levels. Other ones include of hyperthyroidism, having a fast, overactive thyroid, nervousness, tremor, agitation, irritability, poor concentration, reduced menstrual flow in women, racing heart rate or palpitations, heat intolerance, so changes in the bowel habits such as frequent bowel movements, enlarged of the thyroid gland, skin thinning, brittle nails, increase in appetite, feeling hungry all the time and sweating, right? So that is kinda, now that you know what the thyroid is and the gut, the gastrointestinal tract is. And then you kind of know what happens if it's too low, if it works too fast or too slow, what happens in your body. So you may be able to be like, oh, I may have a thyroid issue, right? Or you've already been diagnosed with it, right? But now we're going to go into the gut thyroid axis. This is so interesting. I love this topic. I find it so intriguing, right? A healthy gut microbiota has not only got the benefits of the activity in the nervous system and the immune system, it is both directly and indirectly linked to your thyroid function. A growing number of studies support the link between gut microbe composition and thyroid health. Many thyroid and intestinal diseases coexist, like Hashimoto's and Graves' disease, which is part of the thyroid autoimmune diseases. And the most common autoimmune thyroid diseases are often in conjunction with celiac disease or non-celiac wheat sensitivity, which has got to do with the gut, right? The negative influence of immune system and the inflammatory regulation of the impact of the gut microbe of dysbiosis seems to be likely to promote autoimmune diseases such as thyroid issues, right? But now that we know that it actually is a link and we know what the gut thyroid axis is, let's see how the gut affects the thyroid and how the thyroid affects the gut. Let's get into it, right? So remember what I spoke about. I said that your thyroid produces mostly T4, which is inactive. So you've got the inactive T4, you need the T3 for it to be active, right? So you need tissues like your gut to convert it into an active form of T3, which is responsible for energy, metabolism, body heat, and so many more functions. About 20% of the thyroid hormone converts takes place in your gut, and it is the job of your healthy gut flora to make sure that you get the amount of T3 active thyroid hormone that you need, right? If your gut is not functioning optimally, you may experience symptoms of hypothyroidism and so forth, right? So let's look at things of the gut that affect your thyroid. Number one thing that we're going to look at is leaky gut. We've all heard about leaky gut before, and if you haven't, It is so interesting, right? We'll go a little bit into it. It has actually been estimated that your gut houses between like a lot of your immune system. The percentages vary. Some say 60, 70, up to even 80% of your immune system. Depends which study and which research we look at. So the aspects of the immune system known as the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, GALT, can become triggered by infections, agent, food particles, and other proteins that make its way through the lining of the intestine in a condition known as leaky gut. Exposure to non-self proteins or antigens stimulate the immune system to produce antibodies. So it's kind of saying what leaky gut is, right? You have your gut, things come out of it, attacks it, and there's some antibodies produced. This is such simple terms. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But essentially, the job of the antibodies is to tag foreign proteins for destruction. However, sometimes it doesn't occur properly, and when this happens, your immune system can mistake your tissue as foreign and begin to attack the target tissue, in addition causing inflammation. Essentially, that is kind of like what leaky gut is, right? The job of the gut mucosa of intestinal lining is to allow nutrients to pass through for absorption and utilization of the body. At the same time, the intestinal lining should keep harmful proteins from entering. But in case of a leaky gut, these proteins are able to cross its protective barrier and trigger an inflammatory response. So repeat exposure, which the body will respond by creating antibodies, which can offset a cascade of autoimmune destruction of thyroid tissue, resulting in Hashimoto's and eventually hypothyroidism. This is the link between a leaky gut and essential thyroid issues, right? It is so much more complex than that, but that's essentially what can happen if you have a leaky gut. It can impact your thyroid, essentially resulting in hypothyroidism. The other one about your gut is number 2, which I want to talk about, is your stomach acid, also known as your HCl, right? So a low stomach acid, which increases intestinal permeability, which can cause leaky gut, right? And cause inflammation and infection. Studies have shown a strong association between stomach acid, low stomach acid, and autoimmune thyroid disease. So if you have low stomach acid, you're unable to break down the food that you're taking in. Your stomach acid isn't strong enough to break down the food that you're taking in to ensure that it's taking the nutrients it needs for your thyroid to actually function, which I didn't go into detail, but I will go into detail into another podcast that I'll do in actually thyroid, to understand the thyroid. But essentially, you need cofactors for the thyroid to function well. And if you don't have enough stomach acid or not properly functioning, you're unable to break down this food to get the proteins, the amino acids, the nutrients that you require for your thyroid to function, which has been clearly linked to thyroid issues. Another interesting one is constipation, number 3, right? Constipation can impair hormone clearance and cause elevations in estrogen, which in turn raises thyroid binding globulin levels and decrease the amount of free thyroid hormones available for the body. On the other hand, low thyroid function slows transit time, causing constipation and increasing inflammation, infection, and malabsorption. This is absolutely huge. It might not sound huge, but let's think about it. Like, let's take a second, let's pull back, right? If we have low thyroid functioning, right, it causes a low transit time, which means we're more likely to get constipated, which increases inflammation, increases the risk of inflammation, and increases malabsorption, which then affects our thyroid because we don't have the cofactors to make our thyroid function the way it's supposed to be. So it's like an ongoing cycle. So if you do have constipation, definitely affecting the thyroid. If you have thyroid issues, it's definitely affecting your gut, right? The other one I want to talk about, the 4th one, is gut bacteria. Our gut microbiota also influences the absorption of minerals, and it's important for the thyroid, including iodine, selenium, zinc, and iron, which are needed to convert T4 to T3. That is the key thing that you need. So remember that you need iodine, selenium, zinc, and iron. And there's other amino acids that you need, but this is minerals. So this is what you need to convert it from being inactive for it to be active. And remember, if you don't have stomach acid and things like that to get those, if you're not eating the right foods, if you're actually not eating foods high in iron and zinc, there goes your thyroid, right? So all of them are essential for thyroid functions, and there's a clear link between thyroid dysfunction and altered levels of these minerals. So, for example, if you're iodine deficient, may lead to goites, which is the gland going bigger in your where your thyroid is, presumably thyroid nodules, and even for follicular thyroid cancer. High iodine intake can either induce hypothyroidism or hypothyroidism, and depends on the individuals, right? The gut microbe influences iodine uptake. Did you hear that? You need iodine for your thyroid to function well, but your gut microbiota influences iodine uptake, the recycling, and so forth. In addition, there is a pronounced influence of minerals on interactions between the host and the microbiota, in particular selenium, iron, and zinc. This is absolutely crazy, right? Another one, iron is essential for bacterial growth. Iron availability influences the composition of the microbiota, and at the same time, the microbiota influences the iron availability. So it depends on your gut microbiota, depends how much iron you're actually going to be intake. Iron is vital for efficient iodine utilization and thyroid hormone synthesis, and dysbiosis could cause thyroid disorder, including impaired thyroid hormone synthesis, storage, and secretion. This is where your gut microbiota is absolutely key for your thyroid function, as we have seen for us. So first of all, we need to have a good intake of the things that we mentioned, such as what we mentioned is selenium, zinc, iodine, and iron. First of all, we need to have foods that have them in it, and then we need to make sure that our stomach acid is good enough to break it down. We need to make sure that we're not constipated. We need to make sure that we have enough, that we don't have a leaky gut. Once we've ensured all of that, we need to ensure that we have a right balance of our gut microbes to ensure that we actually reuptake the minerals that we need to ensure that our thyroid's functioning properly. So for anyone who says that your gut has absolutely nothing to do with your thyroid, I beg to differ. This is absolutely key. Your thyroid is key. Sorry, your gut is key for your thyroid to function well, but also at the same time, your thyroid function is absolutely key for your gut to be functioning at an optimal level. And this is where we've seen that the gut microbiota is key to do the job to make sure that our thyroid is in point, right? This is absolutely crazy. Just reading and hearing it, it's kind of like, wow, like we need to have a good balance of our gut microbe. If at any stage there's an imbalance and we have too many bad gut bugs, it's going to affect our thyroid, right? If we have infections, it's going to affect our thyroid. If you have inflammation in our gut, it's going to affect our thyroid. It is so sensitive. And then if it's not working properly, we're unable to take the T4 and convert it to T3 and make it active, which may be another issue, right? Another one is inflammation, right? When inflammation goes up, cortisol follows, and this downregulates the conversion to T3 active. So this is a lot to talk about, right? But our gut microbiota regulates inflammation, right? By inhibiting pro-inflammatory cytokines. This is key. So if you're not familiar with these terms, don't worry. All you need to know is that the more of these inflammation that we have in your system, the more cytokines we have in our system, the more inflammation you have. The more inflammation you have, the more your cortisol goes up, and then that inhibits the conversion of T4 to T3, which means, if we go back to everything, right, let's put it all together. If we're stressed, our gut microbe is affected. If our gut microbe is affected, our thyroid's affected. Right? This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. It has direct links. It has indirect links, right? So if our cortisol's up high, of course, it's going to affect our thyroid, right? Because our hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis and is the same as similar to our hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis. It's kind of using the same wavelength, right there. So essentially, the other one is if we have inflammation in our gut, means that we have less conversion to our active thyroid hormone, which equals thyroid issues. So I've only spoken about a few things here, which is specific to gut. There's so many things that influence the thyroid, but here I just spoke about the things that affect our gastrointestinal tract, such as leaky gut. Remember? Talk about leaky gut, low stomach acid, constipation, our gut microbiota, and number 5, inflammation. These are the 5 things that occur in our gut that affect our thyroid absolutely dramatically, and that, a thyroid can affect these 5 of our gut. So for anyone who says your gut is not as important for your thyroid, well, it is, right? It's absolutely key. So the question is what are you doing to make sure that your gut is on point, to make sure that your thyroid's on point? This is what I want to talk about next, is 3 tips to optimize your gut thyroid axis. Let's get into it, right? Number 1 is determine any food intolerances. Why am I mentioning this? Because these food intolerances are going to make your leaky gut worse. They're going to reduce your stomach acid. They're going to cause more inflammation, make you constipated. So you need to first determine are you intolerant to gluten, dairy, corn, soy, nuts, beans, legumes, coffee, tea? These are the key ones that come up on tests. So what you can do is you can either have a food diary yourself, or work with a healthcare professional, or even get tests done which may determine if you have any food intolerances. Because the more food intolerance we have, the more it will affect your thyroid, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is review your gut bacteria, your gut flora. What's your gut flora like? Do you know what it's like? Do you have too much of a certain good bacteria? Do you have too little of a good bacteria? What is happening in your gut? Do you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? Do you have small intestinal fungal overgrowth? Do you have candida? What is going on in your gut? What is happening with your microbiota? What is happening in your gut? That's what you need to find out, and how you're able to balance it. Do you need to take prebiotics? Do you need to do a anti-candida, anti-SIBO protocol to ensure that you're removing these bacteria, this fungus and parasites and so forth? You need to find out what is actually happening in your gut. Is it working at an optimal level, and how do you get it to work at an optimal level? So first, find out if you have any intolerances. Second, check your gut flora, gut microbes, gut bacteria. What is happening there? Third one, boom, stress. Like we mentioned above, chronic stress can actually change the makeup of your microbiome. It also disrupts the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which affects pretty much all of your hormones in your body, including your thyroid hormone. That is key. What is your stress like? How are you managing your stress, right? Talking about that, let's just take a deep breath. Let's go. In, hold it, out. Wow. Sometimes I get too excited about these podcasts and I just go. And I know I'm in a sympathetic nervous system mode when I talk about these podcasts, because I just get the information out. It's like I have so much in here that I just want to get it all out, and I forget to take a breath in and actually calm myself. And this is where probably you also forget to take a breath in and actually, connect. But that affects my microbiome, that affects my thyroid, and that affects your gut microbe and your thyroid. So this is where it's key to understand, do you have stress management strategies in place to ensure that you're going from a sympathetic nervous system into a parasympathetic nervous system, so you're able to convert that non-active into an active thyroid hormone, and you're able to have an optimal life. So there you go. 3 tips to optimize your gut thyroid axis: determine your food intolerances, review your gut microbe, and manage your stress. There you have it. Today in this podcast, you've actually learned about how your gut influences your thyroid and then what you can do about it. There you have it. If you have any questions, please get in touch with me. If you know someone who has thyroid issues, share this episode with them. If you're ever out and someone's talking to you and they talk about thyroid, be like, oh my gosh, yes, the Natural Health Podcast, jump onto that podcast. It's going to help you out so much. At the end of the day, do what you do best. Love, like, share, rate, review the Natural Health Podcast. Until next Monday, love you.